Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to be sharing with you a shadow work prompt to help you get more in touch with your unconscious mind. Alright, so in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you a shadow work prompt that I often use with my viewers, my students, and my clients to help them get a deeper connection with their unconscious mind and to connect more with their shadow through this visualization. Now, before we get into the visualization itself, I want to share a bit of information about the relationship between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So one of the things that's really important to understand is that the conscious mind and the unconscious mind operate in two different formats. So the conscious mind tends to operate in logical, linear, narrative, and visual ways. This tends to be the main ways that we as the conscious mind can kind of understand things that come up. Now with the unconscious mind doesn't operate through any of those formats. From the perspective of the unconscious mind is totally invisible and ineffable. And yet one of the best things that we can do for our shadow work practice and for our process of individuation more generally is to be a cooperative receiver of the messages of the unconscious mind. Now the challenging part with that is that the unconscious mind is invisible to us. We're not really able to directly gain the messages of the unconscious mind. I want you to think about the unconscious mind a little bit like the invisible man. And so if you're trying to, let's say, understand more about the invisible man, what you want to do is you want to maybe throw a bucket of paint on him so that you can actually see the way he moves and the way he interacts with the world. So you're not seeing the invisible man himself in that case, you're seeing the paint that's fallen all over him. So with this metaphor of the invisible man, you see that in order to interact with the unconscious mind, you need some kind of a medium of communication. And we have many different mediums of communication that we can use as the conscious mind to connect with the unconscious mind. So one example would be dreams. Dreams are sort of like the paint on the invisible man. So through all of the symbols that we interact with in dreams, we start to be able to understand a little bit more about what the unconscious mind is trying to communicate to us. And if we think about the unconscious mind as being like this director that creates these nightly movies for us, we can then take our sort of logical, linear, narrative, visual mind, our conscious mind, and start to analyze into and interpret what's going on in the dream and start to glean what the unconscious is trying to communicate to us so we can tap into that deeper wisdom. We can also do similar things with synchronicities, where we essentially look at something that's showing up in life in a way that's, let's say, beyond pure coincidence, beyond pure chance. And when we look at that, we start to interpret it, and anything that we're looking at externally, we can start to interpret for what it means to us internally. We also can use different, let's say, random patterns to start to do this. So, for example, like in a Rorschach test, the idea is we look at these random ink blots, and in seeing imagery within the ink blots, we can then start to interpret the imagery that we see in relation to what's going on in the unconscious mind. The same is true for, like, let's say, constellations in the sky. If you see, let's say, Orion, it's like, if you see Orion in the sky, or if you make some other kind of, let's say, constellation that's more personal to you, it's going to tell you a lot more about the human psychology, or a lot more about yourself than it's going to actually tell you about things going on in the stars themselves. Or if you look up in the clouds and you see an elephant, the idea is that there's no actual elephant in the clouds, but that you're seeing it is actually a reflection of what's going on in the unconscious. Or the idea of that old divination practice of tea leaf reading operates off of that same principle. The idea that the tea leaves are actually going to communicate to you some deeper wisdom. And in this case, it would be, more wisdom about yourself and what's going on in the unconscious, because you're constellating meaning onto those random formations. We can also use ritual as a way to interact with the unconscious mind, because we're imbuing a kind of symbolic significance into the objects that we're interacting with, and through doing so, through going through a particular ritualistic process, we're actually creating an internal shift. So those are just some examples of ways that we as the conscious mind can interact with the mysterious, ineffable ways of the unconscious mind. And I like to think about the relationship between the conscious and the unconscious mind as being like two different programs on the computer. So for example, if the conscious mind is like Microsoft Word and the unconscious mind is like Photoshop, ultimately it's like you can't take a Photoshop document and you can't open it up directly in Word, but what you can do do is you can, let's say, convert that Photoshop document into a JPEG or a PNG, and then you can actually copy paste that into a Word document. So the idea with, like, let's say the visualization that we're going to do today, and also the other modalities that I had mentioned before, like dream work, synchronicity work, rituals, etc., all of those are like creating that conversion file through which the conscious mind and the unconscious mind can communicate. All right, one more thing before we get into today's prompt, and that's that I have an upcoming live webinar on Saturday, April 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and that webinar is called 3 Shadow Work Secrets to Get Out of Your Own Way and Reach Your Full Potential Without Having to Fight Yourself. And so if you would like to register for the live webinar so that you can see it on the same day, go ahead and click the link down below in the description box. Also, if you can't make it on April 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern, no sweat, you can go ahead and sign up and register anyway, and I'll be sending out a replay afterward. And if you happen to come across this video after April 5th, 2025, go ahead and click the link down below anyway, because I'll have that replay available for you there. All right, so with all of that in mind, we're about to go into the visualization today, and you'll want to keep whatever comes up in this visualization in your mind for later, because then afterward you can go back in and you can start to interpret and analyze what you experienced. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so the first step is to find a quiet place to sit where you'll be free from distractions and disturbances for at least 30 minutes. Sit upright in a comfortable chair. You'll want to sit in a place that's comfortable enough to relax, but not so relaxing that you risk falling asleep. Focus all of your attention and awareness on the sensation of your breath entering and exiting your lungs. If your thoughts pull your attention away from the breath, simply bring the attention back to the rhythm of inhaling and exhaling. All right, so to begin the visualization, imagine you're in the first person present perspective of driving a spacecraft that is drifting through outer space. As you're floating along, you notice a small planet off in the distance, and you decide to move in closer to get a better look. As you approach the planet in your spacecraft, you notice that this world looks very similar to Earth, as it has a lot of land and water. You decide to explore the planet. As you land your craft and look around, you realize that this planet is a direct reflection of your personality. All the landmarks are direct representations of your feelings, preferences, memories, and demeanor. All things on this planet symbolize you. Look around and notice what you see. As you're exploring this planet, you see an elevator leading down underneath the ground. This is the elevator that will take you down into your shadow, which is part of your unconscious mind, where all the parts of your personality reside that you are unaware of. You step into the elevator and push the button that brings you down to the deepest parts of your shadow. You ride the elevator down for a few seconds, and the door slides open to a subterranean realm. Look around you. Notice what you see. Are there any other people or beings around? If so, what are they doing? If you speak to them, what do they say? Are there any significant locations around? What do your surroundings look like? Let your mind fill in the details of what's happening in this underground space. If you notice any people, animal, creatures, objects, places, or other visuals, make a mental note of them. You may also attempt to interact with them. Let your imagination fill in the details. All right, now that you're done with the visualization, what you'll want to do is you'll want to jot down everything that you experienced in that, so you can go back and you can interpret and analyze what imagery you saw when you were doing the visualization. And once you've written everything down, what you want to do is you want to start exploring into the different imagery and symbols that came up in the visualization for you. Similarly to how you might analyze or interpret your own dreams by looking at the different symbols that show up in the dreams, you'll also want to do the same thing for this visualization. And so what I recommend is to go from the more personal the symbols are to the more impersonal and collective. So for example, you might start with any people, places, or objects that you know from life. And so if you notice that your dad showed up in the visualization or your friend Jerry showed up in the visualization, what you want to do is you want to write down all of your personal associations with that person. And you want to also write down any memories that you feel might be relevant to the context of the visualization. The same thing if you see any common settings or objects there. You want to put down all of your personal associations with those like people, places, and objects that you recognize from life in this visualization. So again, moving from the more personal to the more impersonal, what you want to do next is you want to look at your personal associations with objects, people, and settings that you don't recognize from life in the dream. So this is your own personal feelings about things. So for example, if you see a wooden table in this visualization, what you want to do is you want to go, okay, what are my associations with wooden tables in general? Like, what do I think about them? What pops to mind? Then you want to move to the most impersonal and most collective and archetypal. For example, if you see a queen show up in your visualization, you can think about what are your personal associations with queens first, but then you can also look up information about the queen archetype and what the queen archetype symbolizes and represents in general in an archetypal sense. Then once you have all of these like personal and collective associations with all of the symbols that have come up in this visualization, you want to start making intuitive connections between the different symbols that came up and to see if any meanings kind of intuitively jump out to you as you look at them. For example, if I have a friend of mine from high school show up in the visualization and there's an old television set from the 1950s and there's also the queen archetype, I might try to find like how do those relate together for me? So is there a particular association with that friend? Like maybe I used to like walk around town with that friend, and then it's like, is there anything that has to do with TVs? It's like, oh, maybe my friend and I used to watch television sometimes and we would watch this, that, or the other thing, and maybe there was a particular television show, and is there any relationship between that television show and the queen archetype? archetype. So I want to just intuitively kind of look and see if there's any connections or any meanings that spring forth from the information that's there. And from there, I can start to think about what meanings I can glean from this visualization and how it might, in a practical sense, reflect things about my inner world or circumstances that I'm going through in, my current life experiences. All right, so that's all I have for you for now. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If so, go ahead, give me a thumbs up, hit the notification bell, give me a comment down below. Also, if you would like to register for my free live webinar on Saturday, April 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern, go ahead, click that link down below in the description. And if you would like to learn more about shadow work, go ahead and click this video right here. And keep becoming more you.